We have a lot of information out there about kids and meltdowns and behaviors and how to make behaviors go away. How to make kids comply and behave and fit into this box that we need them to fit into, because the more stressed that we are, the more we want everything to be a certain way. And of course, this is totally understandable. However, when we focus on behavior alone, we miss that behavior is communication. It is telling us something, and so often it is these kids' way of telling us something that they may not be able to communicate. We miss the fact that when we focus on behavior alone and getting rid of that at all costs, we so often create kids that repress emotion or act out more, and unintentionally we are contributing to the anxiety and depression and difficulty managing emotion all throughout life, and kids that will isolate or act out or blame or criticize themselves or others. We miss seeing this relationship with kids and the small people around us as a relationship like any other that will go up and down and have tough days and have great days, and all of the other inevitable things about relationship that we forget apply to kids and our relationships with them as well. We miss seeing the unique perspective that they bring to the table and that unique child point of view when we are so stressed and so stuck in our own world as adults. We also miss the systems that make all of this conscious interaction stuff so challenging. And what do I mean by conscious interaction stuff? Really, I'm thinking about the ways that we show up in relationships with ourselves, with others, and with kids. So are we helping the relationship by the way that we are interacting, or are we hindering that relationship? And it can always go both ways. We miss the impact of the systems around us. So this warp speed of life, the emphasis on more, and never enough. So more education or more titles or more materialism, more wealth. We miss that being good or achievement overall is so often not what creates a meaningful life. We miss that interaction alone is a microsystem. So the way that we interact with ourselves and others and kids is our way of creating a system in our lives. And again, it can be a helpful system or it can be one that harms. Research again and again shows that this system that we currently have doesn't really work when it comes to creating a content, meaningful, connected life. So when we focus on power and control and this hierarchy of systems, so there's somebody up here and there's somebody down here, and the person down here needs to listen and get in line over anything else. So when we have this system, we get disconnected. We go to things like spanking because we just feel like we don't have other tools in the moment, and we are so stressed, we resort to power over everything else. Kids then begin to shut it all down and be who they need to be to comply, be who they need to be to behave. And we've all been there throughout childhood, so many of you listening, I know, are relating to this. Instead of being who we are, this behavioral, compliance-based way of being and the system that so honors power over everything else comes at the cost of our human authenticity. Did you know that behavior-based models actually are shown to increase the behavior that we're trying to reduce? So when we have the short-term effects of a child that is afraid and starts to stop the behavior, it doesn't show that in the long term, these behaviors are often internalized or directed outwardly, so the kid is acting out more or internalizing it again against themselves. Gabor Mate talks about authenticity versus attachment. So essentially what he is saying is that kids will attach no matter what. So they will be who they need to be, or they will act out in ways that they are trying to get help because they are trying to attach and get needs met. So get love and connection and food and water and shelter. When we focus on what is right for society and what is right in the system that we live in, we miss what is right for the kids around us, and we miss so often what is right for ourselves. So when we stop to think about, okay, is this grinding hard and getting the most money or getting the most material stuff and having the most of this or this or this or shopping online and getting all the things, is that really what is creating a life that we are proud of and content with? Probably not. So in the current system, kids learn, often totally unintentionally. So if you're feeling guilty, there really is not so much a right and a wrong or a good and a bad, just as what is most helpful for us humans to have a life that is meaningful and feels rewarding. So when we think about kids, so often feel like people aren't really there to support them unless they are being smiley or quiet or behaving. It's setting up this expectation for kids that they need to be this certain way to receive what they need. And if they're this other way, not so much. And again, it's so unintentional. But what happens with this is kids become self-sufficient in a chronic, unhealthy way, or they isolate or act out or blame or criticize in a way that really depletes, and they're not giving so much to nourish themselves and others in the community. They're giving in a way that they feel like they need to. So this is where we all burn ourselves out trying to be a certain way versus focus on the connection and things around us that really do feel good. So what has actually been shown to create a meaningful, rewarding life? It is things like connection and laughter and community and shared experiences. But how do we get back to this? So how do we begin to think about dismantling these systems around us that aren't really that helpful? My view and why I developed this course and this method is that it begins in childhood. Our interactions and focusing on the child's perspective, because they truly are experts at being present and communicating in a very authentic way, for better or worse. So instead of thinking about doing what is most convenient or comfortable to us in the short term, we're thinking about this long-term way of living. We're thinking about our own histories, our own narratives, what is showing up, what we are bringing to the table, what we have accomplished through life, and how that feels. Is it really rewarding to us, or is it somebody else's rule or guideline or expectation that encouraged us to do that? What I hear again and again from clients, often with this stuff, if they're being honest, is that in the beginning, this feels like woo-woo emotional stuff. Does it really matter? Why do we need to look at childhood? It's so long ago. Does this really show up now? Yada, yada, yada. It's woo-woo stuff. But then they start to see it. And moment after moment, kids are not engaging in those power struggles like they typically would have before. The emotions grow less intense or less frequent, and the foundation starts to flip. So instead of seeing these moments as irritating or frustrating, we see them as opportunities. And again, I know this may seem very far-fetched if you're just getting started with all of this, but we start to see the child's needs and understand that their behavior has a root or a meaning in some way. And by seeing their meaning, we begin to see our own. So by honoring their own unique needs and understanding what those are, we begin to connect with our own in a really different way. So the moment I started to connect with this emotional self and my inner world, not just intellectualizing or spiritualizing, because I was real good at the cognitive intellectual space and feel so comfortable there to this day, but really cultivating the safety and security within myself in a way that allowed me to be present with kids and connect with that vulnerable human side that kids are experts with, things really began to change for me. So without this core sense of being, we are spinning our wheels and trying to be a certain way and trying to get all this stuff or whatever it is, however it shows up to us. Yet we're not really feeling it in our bodies and in the present moment. So my experiences with countless kids, especially those with challenging emotional profiles, has shown me it's the moments that I am really disconnected that they have these intense behaviors, or they're pulling me into the present. So kids have this way, again, whether we like it or not, or are ready for it or not, they have this way of pulling us into the moment with their behavior. So when these things are happening, we have no choice but to be present or be engaged or have something activated within us that needs to be heard. So the behavior that kids have is allowing us to see their perspective, even if it's really tough. So I'm Katie from Thriving Littles, and I share about the childhood experience and its impact on all of the lifespan. From working with countless kids and humans and families, I've developed a method based on these experiences that have worked again and again for so many. So this method is really based on my training as a pediatric OT, my personal experiences, and my own healing journey, healing my own trauma throughout the years. It is for self-aware individuals who are really ready to dive in and do this work. So people who are questioning and wanting to get back to intuition, where individuality and humanity lives, and not necessarily follow a set sequence, but who want to get back to their instincts by having the information and having a possible framework to use. Most importantly, I've really changed my own life by doing this. So I've changed my mind and body connection and my intimate relationships, my friendships. I've seen parents and families that I've worked with fall into an ease like nothing before. With mere bits of this method and this process, I have seen so many transform, and it's really given me the confidence to bring it to you in this way. And this program will walk you through a process to master it. I developed the Meltdown method by seeing how many of the systems out there rely on compliance or control versus connection, and I've seen everybody struggle in the process. And so many of the kids I know start to develop this idea that they're the bad kid. And when we have that separateness from the community, we start to grasp for all these external things, and we get panicky because connection really is this root core need. So when kids are having trouble and internalizing that they're bad or they're disconnected, we start to have all of these behaviors show up. So when we start to feel this separateness or this outsiderness, we become wired for survival. So our brains and bodies are thinking we are on our own and we need to make it happen. We need to control. We need to resist. We need to defy in order to feel secure. So this is where whenever we feel guilt or shame, we are swept out of the present moment ourselves and into this control or this grasping and panicky feeling that we aren't sure what to do. So instead of being present to life, we subconsciously have this inner critic that shows up and is telling us all of these things that we should be doing better and we should be doing differently and we should be doing this or that, or we shouldn't have done this or that. And we subconsciously begin to wear masks to try to be a certain way versus being who we are. So relationships might be surface level. We struggle with anxiety or depression or repressed anger, and instead of understanding how to manage our emotions in the moment. So of course, when kids are upset, we get reactive, or we yell, or we maybe grab them a little bit harder than we meant to, because we didn't learn these tools to manage emotion in our own childhoods or our own school systems. So of course, when a child around us is upset and showing these big emotions, showing these big feelings and healthy attachment signals, we are flooded. It triggers these old wounds and these old ways of being, and we feel like we are reactive and impulsive, and this animal body that we all have kind of takes over. So despite reading all of the caregiving or parenting books, we are feeling like we don't have any tools in this moment. We feel pressured by people around us to be a certain way or to do something differently because this really is a countercultural way of interacting. So when we spend all of that time with our inner critic and we start to think, is this the right way? Should I be doing it differently? Do I need to be in control? I need to be in charge in this moment, and I didn't do enough, or I wasn't enough, or I'm not enough in this moment. We really miss the meaningful opportunities around us and just showing up imperfectly and who we are. And we miss this time in kids' lives that is so brief in the scheme of things. So with so many opinions and judgments out there, how do we know what the right way is? Or how do we get back to our instincts and develop our own system and our own way that works for us? So imagine waking up and instead of that chaotic morning of nagging and yelling that I hear so often, we start to shift things. We start to think about the times that we really enjoy and how to put more of those into life. So maybe it's starting 5 minutes in bed with snuggling or doing that draw on the back game that the child loves. Maybe it is things like going down for breakfast and people are actually helping with the breakfast preparation and the meal and enjoying it. And not just because we are forcing them to or because we are forcing them to, but because it actually is this rhythmic, connected way to start the day that everybody enjoys. It isn't about coming in hot with all of our professional goals for you professionals or educators out there. It's about seeing the child's unique strengths and seeing who they are and expanding on those strengths and individuality that will benefit them all throughout life. We see the child for who they are, and surprisingly, it isn't as exhausting as it may seem from the get-go. It's energizing us. It's allowing us to help see ourselves and to witness our experience and the people in our lives versus go through the moments or go through the day like a zombie or a robot. So in the Thriving Through Meltdowns program, launching in a few days, we really learn to get back to instincts with this handbook or framework of knowledge that guides a child's development every step of the way. In the next video, I will show you the first step of this process, which is something that may surprise you. And it's a simple tip, so you'll be able to get results even the same day that you watch. So register here for the early bird waitlist, and you'll be the first notified at the course release. While I wish I could work with all 50,000 of you individually, I really like to work with a small community because that's one of the most energizing things about my work is that I get to see real-time feedback and real-time shifts and aha moments happening. And by signing up for this early bird link, you'll get access a day before the general audience. I'll see you in the next video, which is the first step of the Meltdown method.